Now, your host, Michael Cohen, with a Capital City recap on more compelling talk radio, 1320 WILS.
634, 1320 WILS. It is Tuesday, and it is in the 30s again. It's going to be in the 40s this weekend, so maybe that's it for the cold weather. I doubt that. Well, in Texas, a complete change in the case, the case that involved that video that purported to show Planned Parenthood officials trying to illegally profit from the sale of fetal tissue. Well, now, instead of indicting Planned Parenthood, it's the two abortion opponents who made the undercover video that are facing charges. Chris Lewis is a criminal defense attorney down there in Texas at cranelewis.com. Chris, great to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and I'm guessing in Texas, this is probably, a huge story down there too, right?
Yeah, actually nationwide, but especially here in Texas, the convergence of the criminal deal and how everyone thought it was going to go one way, it went the other way, and then, of course, the political ramifications of it. It's a giant story.
So when the grand jury gets the case, they're presented with charges against Planned Parenthood, right?
Typically, that's the way that it's done. This was done a little bit differently. The district attorney down there in Houston, she was actually appointed by our Republican governor at the time, Rick Perry, and then she won re-election. She is a Republican district attorney. And our lieutenant governor, Dan Patrick, essentially said, hey, we think that Planned Parenthood has committed these crimes, or individuals in Planned Parenthood. We want the Harris County District Attorney's Office in Houston to investigate. So they gave it to, the DA's office gave it to the grand jury. The grand jury has power to subpoena documents, to subpoena witnesses, to take testimony. So they essentially conducted probably a 2-month investigation.
Are you saying that's not typically how it works?
Not typically. The way that it works is, the way that it typically works is as you've said it. Someone's been arrested for a felony offense. Then before the case is indicted, it's got to be presented to a grand jury. At least 9 of the 12 members of the grand jury have to find there's probable cause that a crime occurred in order for a person to be indicted.
So they would either pursue it or they would drop it, right? That would be the decision, yes or no?
That's right.
Okay. And why do you think in this case they didn't present it that way to the grand jury?
Well, I think because of, number one, the political nature of it. They didn't want this to be a partisan type of investigation. I think the DA just kind of stepped back and said, grand jury and law enforcement, do what you need to do to arrive at the answer. Were there any crimes that were committed? And if there were, let's address those.
Just an open-ended kind of investigation. And these are what, just citizens in the county, essentially?
Well, no, they're not citizens in the county. They're actually from California. These are just individuals. The reason why it's being pursued in Harris County, Texas, is because the Planned Parenthood, it's called Planned Parenthood Gulf Coast. It's there in Harris County. And these individuals came over there, and that's where they did the videoing. And that's where they apparently presented the fictitious IDs as well. Interesting,
but the grand jury was in California, you're saying?
No. The individuals were originally from California, but the grand jury actually met there in Houston.
In Houston, okay. So they meet, and I guess this is the shocker. They end up indicting actually the two abortion opponents who videotaped the case. What exactly did they indict them on?
And they indicted them on two things. One was these individuals essentially conducted their own unsanctioned, at least unsanctioned by law enforcement, their own sting operation. So they indicted them on purchasing the fetal tissue, which you're not allowed to do, but that was a misdemeanor. And then they indicted them on the felony of tampering with a government record. That was the fake IDs that they had, or the fake driver's licenses that they had produced that purported to be from California.
Do you think that's an appropriate charge?
It's an appropriate charge based upon the facts. It's all we do, and that's apparently what the jury did, was just look at the facts. Was it a fake ID? Yes. Did they present it? Yes. Was it with an intent to harm or defraud? Yes. Well, but I don't think that's the end of the story.
The Center for Medical Progress, which is basically the group behind this, they say they use these undercover techniques for investigative journalists that they've used for decades in, quote, exercising our First Amendment rights for freedom of speech and of the press. and follows all applicable laws. So they're saying that this is just something journalists do, it's part of the job. How do you think that'll work out in court?
No, I don't think that argument will work out. I think there's others that will better serve them. The investigative journalism, you can lie about who you are, you can have cameras, but once you start altering what purports to be a government document, and you're making fictitious licenses or fictitious documents, then you're running afoul of the law. The problem that probably the state's going to have on this is such a controversial and lightning rod type of topic. And I've said this already a couple of times today. I don't know if you can get a jury of 12 people that aren't going to be so divided on this issue where they can reach a unanimous verdict and convict somebody of these crimes.
Oh, just because of the fact that it revolves around abortion?
That's what this is going to be. I mean, it's not going to come down to whether or not they possessed or they displayed fictitious driver's licenses. It's going to come down to a referendum on abortion. How do you ultimately feel about abortion? The judge will try to limit the scope of that and to narrow the issues, but the truth be told, there's very few issues like this one, and I think it's going to come down.
How does that come in? I mean, if you're the prosecutor, right, and you're simply talking about the licenses, the driver's licenses, how as a defense attorney do you bring in the abortion issue?
Well, all of the evidence is going to be centered around. First of all, there's going to be a ton of media coverage, but second of all, all the evidence is going to center around what these people did at the abortion clinic. It's going to involve the videos. It's going to show the licenses. So that's going to be a part. The defense attorney's not going to even have to focus on it. It's going to be part and parcel of all of the evidence that's admitted into that particular trial.
What do you think of the fact that there was no indictment at all of Planned Parenthood in this case?
I think it was a grand jury that took their job seriously. They knew what they were there to do, and the question posed to them was, did anyone within Planned Parenthood sell any of this fetal tissue for profit? And the answer by the grand jury was a resounding no. I think what Planned Parenthood has said is any money that we get from the sale of fetal tissue is for storage and it's for transportation. We don't profit on this whatsoever.
Well, it sounds like if it was not for the licenses, nothing would have really come of the whole case then, the driver's licenses.
I don't think that it would have, and it's almost the caveat of don't throw stones if you live in a glass house.
Yeah.
Don't go after somebody criminally, but use unlawful tactics in order to try to get that evidence, or it may come back to bite you, and it looks like that's what happened.
And the grand jury, is it just a majority had to agree to this? Or?
No, 9 of the 12 have to vote to convict. If it's 8 or less, then they're no billed, which means there's no true bill of indictment return, and there's no case.
9 of 12, I got it. Do you think if it would have required a unanimous agreement that this would have likely not happened?
It's impossible to know because I don't know what evidence was adduced.
Well, but do you think the same personal views on abortion come into play for a grand jury also?
I think so, but the grand jury is a little bit different process. These people are together for 3 months. They a lot of times will see the same prosecutors over and over again. They become like a family, and they know everything that they do in there. It's a secret proceeding. So you get a little bit different dynamic than you get of a jury that's sitting in a courtroom and the cameras are there and they see the people and they see the impact of their decision.
They're less emotional, you're saying?
I think they're a lot less emotional, especially when they're the ones driving the investigation. And it appears in this situation that the grand jury was right in the middle of the investigation.
Chris Lewis, criminal defense attorney down in Texas. We'll continue tracking this one. Chris, thank you so much.
Appreciate your time.
Yep.